What happens when a beloved morning television host dares to confront one of the world's most controversial royals live on air? No one could have predicted the storm that erupted when Prince Harry sat down with Lorraine Kelly, expecting a light-hearted conversation, only to find himself caught in the most intense on-camera grilling of his career. What began as a routine interview quickly spiraled into an unforgettable television showdown that left viewers across the country stunned. As the cameras rolled, the atmosphere inside ITV studios was electric. Prince Harry walked onto Lorraine's familiar set, wearing his trademark nervous smile. But there was tension behind it. What was supposed to be a simple appearance to promote his latest charitable venture soon became a lesson in how quickly live television can fall apart. Lorraine Kelly, known for her warmth and charm, was clearly ready for a far tougher exchange than usual, and Harry was walking right into it. "Prince Harry, lovely to have you back on the show," Lorraine began, her tone polite but edged with steel. Seasoned viewers noticed the change instantly. Harry shifted slightly in his chair, already sensing trouble. Lorraine wasted no time. "There's been a lot of discussion about your recent comments regarding the Commonwealth and the Monarchy. Some might say you've been rather selective with your criticism." Harry's jaw tightened, though his polite smile didn't fade. "Well, Lorraine, I think it's important to have honest conversations about difficult topics. That's what progress looks like," he replied, that familiar defensive tone creeping in. "Honest conversations, yes," Lorraine said, leaning forward. "But some people wonder why those conversations seem to only go one way. You've spoken at length about the institution's failings, but you've been fairly quiet about your own, particularly around the Oprah interview. Some of those claims have been, let's say, disputed." The tension was palpable. Harry's composure wavered, just for a second, before he replied sharply, "What Meghan and I shared was our truth, Lorraine, and I stand by every word." "Your truth," Lorraine repeated, her Scottish accent sharpening. "That's an interesting phrase, because surely there's just truth, facts. Either something happened or it didn't." She let the silence stretch before adding, "When your truth conflicts with everyone else's recollection, it starts to look less like honesty and more like..." "More like what?" Harry interrupted, his voice low and cold. "Please, Lorraine, finish that thought." She met his stare without flinching. "More like a very public tantrum from someone who didn't get their way," she said evenly. "You left the royal family for privacy, yet you've done little but seek publicity since. You criticize the media but sign multi-million-dollar deals with Netflix and Spotify. You speak about mental health yet air your family's private matters on global television." The audience was silent. Every camera focused on Harry's face as his expression darkened. His hands, once resting calmly, now curled into fists. The polished image of the calm, reformed royal was slipping. "You have absolutely no idea what you're talking about," he said finally, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper that sent a chill through the room. "Would you like me to continue the rewrite of the rest of the scene, beyond this point where he starts to lose his temper?" Harry's voice was low, but the venom in it carried more weight than a shout ever could. "You sit here in your comfortable studio, passing judgment on choices you could never understand, on a life you've never lived, on pressures you've never faced." Lorraine didn't flinch. "Oh, but I do understand pressure, Harry," she shot back, her tone rising just slightly. "I understand what it's like to be under constant public scrutiny. The difference is, I don't blame everyone else when things don't go my way. I don't throw my colleagues under the bus the moment it's convenient." The accusation hung between them like smoke. Harry's face had gone pale save for 2 bright patches of red high on his cheeks, the unmistakable sign that his temper was about to break loose. "Colleagues?" he repeated, his voice dripping with contempt. "Is that what you think my family are?" "Well, what would you call them?" Lorraine pressed, sensing she'd struck a nerve. "Because from where I'm sitting, it seems you treated them exactly like colleagues. Useful when they served your purpose, disposable when they didn't. The Queen, your grandmother, gave you everything, stood by you through every scandal. And how did you repay her? By blindsiding her with announcements on Instagram, then publicly questioning her judgment on international television. That was the breaking point. Don't you dare! Harry snarled, leaning forward with such intensity that the studio's security staff visibly tensed. Don't you dare use my grandmother to score cheap points for your little morning show. She understood my position better than any of you ever will. Did she, though? Lorraine asked softly, her voice now calm, which somehow made her words even more cutting, because reports suggested she was deeply hurt by the way you handled your departure. Deeply disappointed by the accusations you made about the family she spent her life protecting. The camera zoomed in on Harry's face. His composure was gone. The fury in his eyes was raw and unguarded. A glimpse of the volatile young man once captured. Shouting at photographers years ago, "You know nothing about what she thought or felt," he said through gritted teeth. Nothing. But Lorraine wasn't finished. She shifted tactics with a deceptively casual tone. "Let's talk about the Invictus Games," she said, as if changing the subject. The sudden pivot threw Harry off balance. His anger flickered into confusion. "Your pride and joy," Lorraine continued. "The one thing everyone agrees you've done right, except there are some interesting questions about the finances, aren't there?" Harry froze. The color drained from his face. "What are you talking about?" he demanded. But there was something new in his voice now. Fear. "Oh, I think you know exactly what I'm talking about," Lorraine said evenly, rifling through a few papers on her desk for dramatic effect. The inflated expenses, the lack of transparency in the charity's financial reports, the questions certain investigative journalists have been asking. Questions that never seem to get answered. It's funny, really. Someone who demands such transparency from his own family becomes remarkably secretive when it comes to his own organization's books. The words hit him like a physical blow. Harry shot up from his chair so violently it rolled backward several feet, the clatter echoing through the silent studio. "How dare you!" he hissed, shaking with rage. "How dare you attack something that helps wounded veterans? You're disgusting!" "I'm not attacking the veterans, Harry," Lorraine said coolly. "I'm questioning why someone who claims to care so deeply for them might be profiting from their suffering. Because that's what this really looks like, doesn't it? Everything you do, the interviews, the book deals, the Netflix series, even your charity work seems designed more to fix your image than to help others." "You have no proof of anything," Harry snapped, but his voice cracked, and the denial rang hollow. Even to him. The cameras caught everything. The flicker of panic, the tightening jaw, the split-second flash of guilt. "Baseless accusations?" Lorraine said, one eyebrow raised. Her accent thickened slightly as she pressed on. "Is that what you call the documented discrepancies in your organization's spending reports? The luxury accommodations billed to the charity? The charity's expense accounts? The unusually high administrative costs that just happen to match up with your personal travel schedule?" Lorraine's words cut through the air like a blade. The audience was motionless, barely breathing. This wasn't an interview anymore. It was a live dismantling of a public figure's reputation, and everyone in the room could feel it. Lorraine seemed to have the kind of information that could destroy Prince Harry completely. Harry seemed to realize it too. His expression shifted rapidly. Anger, panic, disbelief, before he managed to choke out, "You're lying." His voice cracked on the word. "This is a setup. Someone's feeding you false information to try to take me down." "False information?" Lorraine echoed, leaning back with a calmness that only made things worse for him. "You mean like the false information about your family being racist? Or the false claim that you were cut off financially, even though your father supported you for months after you left?" Or maybe the false claim that you didn't know what you were getting into when you married into the royal family. Despite having the best advisors in the world, each accusation landed like a blow. Harry's hands began to tremble. Whether from fury or fear, it was hard to tell. He said quietly, almost pleading. Just stop. But Lorraine pressed on. You see, Harry, this is what fascinates me about you, she said, her voice steady and deliberate. You paint yourself as a victim, a champion of truth and transparency. But the second anyone dares to question you, you crumble. You love dishing it out, but you can't take it, can you? I said stop, Harry roared, his voice echoing through the studio. A few people in the audience actually flinched. You don't know what you're talking about. Everything I've done, every word I've said, has been to protect my family, to protect my wife, to tell the truth about what really happened. Your truth again, Lorraine said with a bitter laugh. Always your truth, never the truth. The truth is, you're a spoiled man who couldn't stand not being the center of attention anymore. When William got married, when he had children, when you stopped being the spare and became just another royal on the sidelines, you couldn't handle it. So you found an American actress who knew how to play the victim just as well as you. And together, you burned down everything your grandmother spent 70 years building. The words hit like a punch. Harry's face went completely white, his eyes blazing with a fury so sharp it was almost frightening. When he spoke, his voice was low, cold, and deliberate. Don't you ever, he said, enunciating every word, speak about my wife like that again. Lorraine didn't back down. Or what? She challenged. You'll write another book about how mean I was? Give another interview about how the press ruined your life? Or maybe you'll sue me too, like everyone else who's dared to question your story. Harry was trembling now, his whole body taut with rage. You have no idea what you've done, he said, his tone dark, almost threatening. No idea what you've just started. What I've started? Lorraine gave a shaky laugh, but it no longer carried the same confidence. For the first time, there was a flicker of doubt in her eyes. Harry, I've just asked questions. The same kinds of questions you've asked about your own family. If you can't handle scrutiny, maybe you shouldn't have made yourself a public figure. This isn't scrutiny, Harry said, taking a step toward her desk. Security immediately tensed. This is assassination. This is exactly the kind of treatment that killed my mother. And now you're trying to do the same thing to me and my family. He'd played the Diana card, and the effect was instantaneous. The tension in the room became electric. But Lorraine didn't back off. She leaned forward, eyes glittering. Your mother, she said softly, would be ashamed of what you've become. The silence that followed was absolute. Harry's face went through a storm of emotions. Shock, disbelief, rage. Until all that was left was something raw and dangerous. Then he laughed. It wasn't the easy, charming laugh people were used to. It was cold, bitter, completely devoid of warmth or humor. A sound that sent a chill through the entire studio. Them irrelevant, Harry said, his tone now calm but chillingly clear. Because people like you turned journalism into blood sport. You took something sacred, truth, and turned it into spectacle. The studio was dead silent. Every eye was fixed on him. Lorraine sat frozen behind her desk, her earlier poise replaced by a pale, trembling stillness. Harry stepped closer, lowering his voice to something almost intimate. You want to talk about my mother? Fine. She believed in the press once. Believed you could shine a light on darkness. But all you did was drag her into it. You hounded her, mocked her, broke her down until the only peace she had left was in death. And now, decades later, you still do it. Just with better lighting and bigger cameras. He looked around the studio, his gaze sweeping over the silent crew. You film every tear, every stumble, every argument. And you call it content. You think that because it's framed between commercial breaks, it's justified. But it's not journalism. It's exploitation. Lorraine swallowed hard. Prince Harry, she managed to say, though her voice was barely audible. I think, no. Harry interrupted sharply. You don't think? You react. You provoke. You bait people into destroying themselves for your ratings. And when they finally break, you call it a story. His words hung in the air thick and heavy. One of the camera operators looked away. Another lowered his camera entirely. Harry's breathing slowed, but his eyes remained fierce. You said my mother would be ashamed of me, he said softly. But the truth is she'd be ashamed of this, of what you've all become, of what this world rewards. For a long moment no one moved. Then Harry gave a small exhausted laugh. Not bitter this time, but hollow. You got what you wanted, Lorraine. A royal meltdown. Congratulations. Make sure the editors get my worst angle. He turned to leave, ignoring the producer's frantic whispers and the guards inching closer. Just before stepping off the set, he looked back one last time. My mother used to say the press could build you up or tear you down, he said quietly. But she was wrong about one thing. You don't build anyone up. You just wait until there's blood in the water. Then he walked out, leaving behind a studio too stunned to clap, speak, or even breathe. Harry's voice dropped into a low growl. You've made real journalists' jobs harder by turning journalism into blood sport. Lorraine finally managed to speak. Harry, I think we should take a break, she said weakly. Harry didn't even look at her. Oh, we're taking more than a break, he said, ripping off his microphone so violently that a burst of feedback shrieked through the speakers. Technicians flinched. We're done. Completely done. He slammed the mic down on her desk. This was supposed to be about veterans, about people who actually matter, about causes that actually make a difference. And instead, you turned it into another cheap spectacle for ratings. The microphone hit the desk again with a sharp crack that made Lorraine recoil. Harry's eyes burned with fury. You want your headline? Here it is. A member of the royal family walked off your show because you're a disgrace to journalism. Go ahead. Print it, tweet it, spin it however you want. He turned toward the exit, the entire studio frozen around him. Then, halfway there, he stopped and looked back one last time. His voice was low but lethal. And Lorraine, the next time you use my mother's name to score cheap points, remember this moment. Remember how it felt when someone finally told you the truth about what you are. Security scrambled aside as he strode to the doors. Lorraine called out, Harry, please! But her voice cracked, thin and powerless. He didn't slow down. At the threshold, he turned one last time, his expression carved from ice. Enjoy the ratings boost, he said. I hope it was worth it. The studio doors slammed behind him with a sound like a gunshot, echoing through the stunned silence that followed. Cameras were still rolling, catching Lorraine's pale, shaken face and the wide-eyed audience who'd just witnessed history. After several unbearable seconds, Lorraine swallowed hard and turned toward the camera. We'll be right back after this break, she said, her voice barely steady. The screen cut to commercial, but the damage was already done. Within minutes, clips would be circulating online, dissected by pundits, and replayed on every major network. The prince had detonated live on air, exposing not only his own raw anger, but the media machine that had driven him there. Lorraine had her explosive moment, but at the cost of her credibility. In the end, both of them had lost, perfect symbols of a culture that confused pain for entertainment and outrage for truth, playing it all out for millions to watch in real time.